Christmas time. And what else is better to talk about during Christmas time than the franchise that comes from one of the best Christmas movies of all time? And yes, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Shut up. The Die Hard franchise, mostly beginning in 1988, has been one that has basically been coming back every decade or so until more recent times. But indeed, Die Hard is one of the most well-known franchises in terms of action, and it is one that basically made a whole man, that of course being Bruce Willis. However, it starts actually much earlier. Some might know, but indeed, the original plot to Die Hard was taken from the book Nothing Lasts Forever, which is a sequel to the book by Roderick Thorpe, The Detective. The Detective, written in 1966, was adapted into a movie in 1968 with, weirdly enough, Frank Sinatra. Side note, this movie kinda blows. I watched it, and while it was funny to hear Frank Sinatra say penis, it was just boring and a little bit confusing. Adapted by Jon Stewart and Stephen E. D'Souza, directed by John McTiernan, Die Hard became one of the most well-known movies of the 80s and one of the best Christmas movies of all time. And it since then has had 4 sequels, each of which of their own varying qualities throughout the decades. Of course, over time, the series really became less known for how cool Bruce Willis was at saying some one-liners and being a very likable character, and more or less another movie that Bruce Willis happened to be in and barely give a shit about. So what happened with Die Hard? Well, it's time to look at the entirety of the Die Hard franchise as we go through a very quick little marathon through all of the Die Hard films. Thankfully, there's not much else to really talk about in terms of Die Hard. Yeah, there's a couple of video games, but and there's a comic book that they were gonna try to adapt into a movie, but whatever, don't care. Let's talk about every Die Hard movie ever, of which thankfully there's only 5 of them, but really 4 of them, but you know. So let's start on how exactly Die Hard even got to be made at all. As mentioned, The Detective was a movie that did well enough, but ultimately it was well enough that the studios decided to buy the rights to its sequel book before the sequel book was ever even written. The movie was never really made, certainly not with Frank Sinatra, but they still had the rights to it for a good while. So ultimately, when writer Jeb Stewart was trying to get some of his scripts out there in the world, he was ultimately brought on to try and adapt said book. He ultimately made some changes, gave the main character a good Scottish name, and drew on his experience writing with thrillers and even apparently having a dream of himself being chased around a building after seeing The Towering Inferno. Die Hard, as mentioned, is directed by John McTiernan, who of course has lots of legal problems throughout his life, but more importantly for our discussion here, of course, would later go to direct The Hunt for Red October, and before this had directed The Predator, and after The Last Action Hero in 93 would even come back to the franchise in Die Hard with a Vengeance, before ultimately making the crazy bad Rollerball remake, and more or less not being too much with movies in the several years since. While the adaptation of the book was of course adapted by Stephen E. Souza and Jeb Stewart, Stephen E. Souza would certainly be in the industry for quite a while afterwards, and though he isn't writing as much, he is still very much involved in productions in Hollywood. The original main character of the detective, Leland, is actually already divorced and is a pretty sad dude that also often likes to monologue. They decided to just shorten all that shit up and make it a way more interesting action film. There was certainly a formula that was kind of being a thing at the time, so deciding to make it a little bit more like a thriller and less like a shoot 'em gun Rambo in a building action scene like the producers wanted it to be, Die Hard came about, being quite a bit about the actual character and his experiences within the building itself and what the hell was happening, and thus we get Die Hard. Said on Christmas, good boy John McClane is ultimately an NYPD detective who is here in Los Angeles to meet up with his wife, who they've kind of been estranged from each other for a while. He didn't believe that her new job, which is at the Nakatomi Plaza and whatever they do, was going to last that long, but ultimately now it's been, I don't know, a nearly divorced number of years, so now he decides, alright, I'll meet her at this Christmas party that they're having at the Nakatomi Plaza, and, we'll see what surely everything will be fine. He meets up with his wife, and everything seems to go well. She's inviting him into their home. We even saw their kids. I hope they appear in other movies and don't suck later. What could go wrong? Uh-oh, now they're fighting. Good job, John. Surely this would be the worst thing that happens tonight. Of course, German radical Hans Gruber decides to show up with a bunch of armed men and some wacky hacker guys to ultimately get inside the vault bank of the Nakatomi Corporation, where they, basically huddle people together and are like, well, this will be easy. Hans Gruber immediately shows how absolutely just horrifying of a man that he is when he's just like, all right, tell us or we'll shoot you. And then Mr. Takagi says no, so he gets shot. And it really shows you how just absolutely just horrifying of a man Hans Gruber is, and also how absolutely great of an actor Alan Rickman is. I want to note the fact that both Alan Rickman and Bruce Willis were not known at this point. We can go back in time and be like, well, yeah, of course they're great. We love them. But they weren't known. Alan Rickman was not known at all, and Bruce Willis was known for, like, romance films. Next time we get, like, another, like, oh, he can't be Batman. He was in that one movie that my mom likes. Remember that happened to this man when he started his fucking career. So yeah, shut up. Having not been around when everyone was rounded up, McClane, of course, starts now going through the building, and basically through one of the walkie-talkies of the first guy that he kills and then sends down the elevator, he just starts messing with Hans the entire time. Ultimately, this walkie is actually able to get to outside, as another cop, Al Powell, is told to look out when McClane tries to send something out to get some help, but nobody really believes him. Now, Al is unfortunately in this situation, which quickly escalates as the actual police now have to do something about it, which ends up not working at all. Even the FBI gets involved, and all they really do is cause a lot of problems. Thankfully, it's really Al who's the only really helpful cop throughout the movie, as he tries to really help out and talk with John McClane the entire time, which is probably the best part of the movie. I just love these two together, and I would have loved to have seen more of them. Al only really shows up in, like, the second one for a little bit, but I would have loved to see more of him. I don't know why they didn't. I had to look up and be like, did Reginald VelJohnson die at some point? It's like, no, he's still alive. And no, he's not Carl Winslow, and no, the kid that he mentions that he shot and why he doesn't like using guns in the movie isn't Urkel. Shut up. All of it builds on top of itself, and with John McClane being a very, like, regular dude, and all of this, you know, though certainly, you know, uberly violent with the fact that blood bags are splattered all over the place, it really tries to play in a more realistic way. John does not just go in guns a-blazing and things are perfectly fine like he's Arnold, right? He is in this and he's getting hurt all the time. He's getting shot at. He's got to step on glass because oopsie doodle. Got to step on glass now. It's through his cunning and almost luck that he's able to really figure out what is in the Nakatomi Plaza. And throughout this, he really shows that he's a very smart guy. Not a genius, but he has enough street smart to not be tricked by dumb things like Hans pretending that he's a regular guy. Die Hard, of course, ending with him able to get to this awesome scene with this standoff. He's about to just, like, give in to all the craziness of the night laughing fit and quick little shootout, leading into him grasping at anything and then being pulled off to fall all the way down. John McClane and Hans Gruber, I think, are probably the best part of the movie. Them going back and forth is always fun, and the two just work off so well with each other. And hell, you know, it's really where the best line of the movie comes from. Say the line, John.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Hell yeah. What a fantastic scene. In fact, there's lots of great scenes. Mostly them are shooting around, which not only are incredibly well done and some great paced action scenes, but ones that do genuinely, like, have purpose to them and have actual stakes to them. One of the most harrowing scenes is when he has to go down the friggin' vents, and he's gotta jump down the vent, and he's, like, nearly misses the thing, and that always scares the shit out of me, even though I know he's gonna make it. It's that, and Bruce Willis as John McClane's can-do attitude is really what makes Die Hard fun the whole entire way through. I always got this rule of my 30-minute mark, and well before it even hits 30 minutes is this movie interesting. Not only do immediately we get John McClane as a likable character with an understandable motive of why he's even in this building at all, and why he would want to save all these people, both being a cop and also his wife is down there, but we slowly building towards, you know, these stakes growing and growing as the cops get involved and as the people who were within the party, that we get a small introduction in the beginning of the movie, getting involved in ways that they shouldn't, really adds to the tension of the movie and then moves it along with its actually pretty simple plot. Because what happens in Die Hard? It's a heist, and it's stopped by Bruce Willis. And that's all that really happens in this movie, right? It's actually really easy to say what happens. But it's the fact that as it constantly builds on top of it and it starts going awry more and more is really where things begin to make this just very simple idea of a plot much more interesting. Even the secondary characters are just fun and likable. And all the action scenes really do feel like they are their own thing, rather than feeling like the same thing happening over and over again, and them just being quick little shoots outs of the big buff man coming in. Plus, the movie isn't afraid to show some, like, genuine emotion. It's really easy for action movies to just have, like, a bad romance scene with the new female character and be like, yeah, I guess they like each other. But with an already established relationship, which you know is troubled and just feels realistic because of that, you feel a lot more invested into seeing them get back together because you want to see them fix this. You know, you said that they have kids. They've have had kids for a long time. How old are they? 6? You know, like, you want to see them get back together because you feel that these are real people that you probably met in your life. Of course, not everything is perfect about Die Hard. I will say one thing that didn't need to be in the movie at all is Richard Thornburg, played by William Atherton. That whole subplot of him being like a news guy trying to find information on John McClane never really helps the rest of the plot. There just is other ways that they could have and also do figure out stuff about each other that he never really matters in the movie. But honestly, that's the, like, one thing I can really point out I don't like about Die Hard. Die Hard is just a badass fun movie. And if you haven't already watched it, what are you doing? It's a movie that's lived up so incredibly well to every praise that it's been given. It absolutely has aged like a fine wine. Nothing about this movie will ever age poorly ever, and unless I'm 80 and suddenly I'm wrong, well then there you go. The one thing I will certainly say about Die Hard, though, and will make a point in doing, is that Die Hard, yes, is in fact a Christmas movie. The important talk about Die Hard is it a Christmas movie? And I'd say, why not? Now, firstly, regardless of whatever answer, it is a good movie to watch on Christmas. It is set on Christmas, and it has Christmas movies within. So it isn't a bad movie to watch on Christmas. It's not like it's un-Christmas, right? It's not like we're watching a friggin' Easter-based movie on Christmas and going, it's Christmas, because Christ and the rabbit. But no, firmly, I will contest that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Christmas songs that are happening either within the universe or it being in the movie's soundtrack, of which there is several that happen during very important moments to show you the fact that they are thematically important to the scene. Which means Christmas is thematically important to the scene, which means Christmas is thematically important to Die Hard. Which means Die Hard's a Christmas movie. It doesn't need Santa or kids opening up presents and going to be a Christmas movie. It needs to be a movie where Christmas is pretty important to the actual movie. And the fact that it is on Christmas and that it's all around the movie, and they play Christmas songs to begin, middle, and end of the movie, of course it's a movie about Christmas. Yeah, the main villains aren't trying to stop Christmas, and it's not like Christmas is used to stop terrorists or something, even though kind of, actually. But it is a man about learning the importance of family and being with them on important days and caring about other people, which is a very Christmassy message, is it not? Now, the other movie that happens on Christmas doesn't really have that at all, and I would say that 2 is certainly a movie set on Christmas, but Die Hard is a Christmas movie, and you can say whatever you want, but you're wrong. I don't care what modern day Bruce Willis has to say, he's the same guy that starred in the 5th Die Hard movie. I feel like the real thing why people don't like the idea that Die Hard is a Christmas movie is the fact that they would then be like, well, that doesn't mean that it's a Christmas franchise, and it's like, no, there are other movies that are clearly Christmas movies that I will also contend another time that are part of a larger franchise, and that's not a Christmas franchise. Some also begin their franchise and are very Christmassy. You can have a Christmas thing as part of a general franchise that isn't all Christmas. You know, like, dumb. After the incredible success that was the first Die Hard, being that it was made on 25 to 35 million and then made a lot more than that, of course there was going to be a sequel. Made only a few years later, Die Hard 2 ultimately comes back, still set on Christmas, with this one actively not being a movie that was originally made to be a Die Hard movie, but is in fact an adaptation of another book. Now, of course, started production as a Die Hard movie, they decided to also adapt another book, just to be like, it's about a cop, so might as well. 2 is adapted from the 87 book by Walter Wagner, known as 58 Minutes, of which you'll see in all of its reprint, known as the basis for Die Hard 2. Die Hard 2's adaptation from the book would, of course, be written by Stephen E. D'Souza, as in the previous one, alongside Doug Richardson, who later actually helped write the Bad Boys movies, and oddly, another Bruce Willis movie called Hostage in 2005. Or as I would call it, one of many movies that if you also called it Die Hard and you pretended that was John McClane, it'd probably fit. But instead of the director from the previous one, it was now directed by Renny Harlin, who had oddly previously directed the Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 and would continue directing throughout the years and is even directing till today, his most recent movie being The Bricklayer, and of course he is starting directing the Strangers films. Bigger budget, certainly bigger star at this point. A few of the people from the previous one reprised their roles, which is neat. With the main villain of this now being an ex-army colonel. I would almost say general, but that's not correct. I don't know anything about, like, where people are in the army, so regardless, he was a man who sympathizes with the now recently captured and about to be extradited Roman Esperanza, who of course was kind of being, like, given guns by the US to fight against communism, but apparently that wasn't good enough, so he got more money from selling coke. This is a part of the plot from the second Die Hard now. We just gotta deal with it. He is being sent to America for laws I feel like sure probably makes sense, and ultimately the colonel is gonna try to get him out. So ultimately he is able to sneak into some of their systems and mess some stuff up by going to a church that's by the like main power grid and basically taking an entire airport hostage. John McClane, who at this point is trying to wait for his wife who is coming to visit him this time, he is all up in this and really gets like immediately suspicious of all of the very suspicious people saying suspicious things. And what do you know, he's entirely right. We once again have an angry leader of the cops who doesn't believe anything that he's saying and stops him from really helping multiple times throughout the movie. But it's fine, he's funny, I guess, so, you know, whatever. But despite people not fully believing in McClane's claims that there will be something bad going on, something bad quickly goes on when ultimately they are told that, hey, they'd better help us out and bring a plane specifically for that one guy that we don't want to get, you know, shot by a firing squad. And right when the people who are in charge of the airport try to just like redirect them somewhere or figure something out, the main villain goes, all right, if you don't believe me, I'm gonna crash a plane. And they're like, yeah, you wouldn't crash a plane. So then he crashes a plane, killing like 100-something people. Probably the highest kill count of the entirety of the whole series, because that is a whole plane. You even get to see the people who are on the plane. Colm Meaney from friggin' Star Trek is there. Anyway, they try to get to the antenna array, and they even send some SWAT people there. But quickly, they're taken down by people who were ready to ambush them. John McClane is able to save at least one of them, but she does kind of a lot, like, a little bit more easily than he did in the previous movie. Now, he's not full action boy shooty shoot like mode as he will be in later movies, but like, you know, he's still like a little bit easier when it comes to fighting these guys. I had a bit of a problem with this when I first watched it, but on rewatch I'm like, nah, whatever, it's fun, he's shooting dudes, shut up. McClane, with help of the one guy he actually helped out in this, is brought to the church and is given help of some U.S. Special Forces, led by this cool dude named Major Grant, who I know from a few other things. Seemingly there's a big-ass shootout, and they maybe even get some of the guys. Some of them seemingly went off somewhere, but don't worry, McClane's here. He jet skis after them and seemingly shoots a whole bunch of them, but nothing happens. And soon enough, you find out why they were, like, changing colors on their ammo packs, because, oops, it's blanks. And this guy who was basically just introduced is part of the whole plan. What a crazy plan that this was. Convince them to get a plane, or else we'll, like, throw down some of your planes is enough. But then to add in the, let's hope they send this one particular group of U.S. Army Marshals, whom are already, like, on our side, and then there you go, that'll really convince them. Ultimately, they begin to nearly get away with the one guy that they're trying to get away with. But of course, John McClane's here to jump on a plane, and he really hates planes, so he is going at it, throwing a guy into a turbine, falling on down with, thankfully, it had enough fuel falling off of it that it can quickly light it up. I'm not quite sure how exactly gasoline works that way, but with it exploding, he's able to say the line. Say the line, John!
Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon.
Wait, that's not how I remember it being. Wait, With them taken care of, they're able to get everyone back down, and John gives his wife a big hug, and hopefully they'll stay together, and they'll have a great relationship going forward. Die Hard 2 is, like, very similar to Die Hard 1. Calling it an exact copy or a ripoff isn't exactly correct, because it's not the same kind of movie. But due to not being the same kind of movie, it isn't really as good, is it? Indeed, it is a hostage situation, and they are dealing with it. There's 1,000 movies like this, and Die Hard 2 is certainly one of them. As a basis idea, it is a fine movie, and I would say Die Hard 2, it's a fun. Die Hard 2, it's fine. It brings us back John McClane, who is as John McClane-y as he was before, still saying his funny little action man sayings, and also getting his ass beat half the time, and still somehow surviving. But it makes sense in these movies, right? John McClane is a pretty regular dude, and as a regular dude, he is really able to be shown as vulnerable, but still get up, and it's cool every time that he does. You really do feel this tension of, I really better help my wife's plane, because slowly they're running out of fuel. Them cutting back to her plane multiple times, though it also involves the dumb news guy from the first one, who thankfully is not in the third one, does at least build the tension slowly, as you're like, how are they going to get them out of this? Plus, John McClane is still a likable character who, literally tries to, like, wave the friggin' plane down in any way possible to at least get these guys to survive, and you really feel that he's devastated. He is just, like, gone, when not only is he unable to save those many people who died in that plane, but also the fact that he sees that could easily happen to Holly very soon. The action scenes certainly are fun and they are more bombastic, but due to them being a little bit less realistic and a lot more flashy, it does come off a little bit more like an Arnold type of, we're here to see all the explosions and stuff. But as I always say with action movies, you gotta make me care about one of two things, and if it's not the characters, it's the action. And for the most part, Die Hard 2 does an okay job at both, and that's really what I can leave that as, right? It doesn't have great characters, and it doesn't have the best action. It has fine both of those. And the supporting characters, I can barely really remember the names of, but they are played by some great actors, and they all do a pretty good job at continuing to build this storyline. As in the previous one, it does continue to build its tension more and more, sure, but it's not as interesting as it was previous, and you don't really get too much from the characters through these action scenes, or any of these character scenes besides more of John McClane. But it's a movie that if you enjoyed the first Die Hard, you'll enjoy Die Hard 2, Die Harder, as, hey, it's more of it, here it is. Now he's in a fucking airport. Die Hard with a Vengeance, Die Hard 3, also written not as a Die Hard film, is oddly enough a movie that was originally written as Simon Says, then bought and changed around a bit to be a Lethal Weapon movie. Now, hearing that, you probably understand why this movie is basically a buddy cop film. Not once again starring Bruce Willis as John McClane, but now Samuel L. Jackson as Zeus Carver. The main villain is the fantastic Jeremy Irons as its secret guy who calls himself Simon. Simon basically starts bombing things, the movie basically beginning with that, as he starts calling the NYPD and starts being like, I want to mess with John McClane. So first he makes John McClane wear a very racist sign in the middle of Harlem, of which Zeus decides to try and save him, because it would be very unfortunate if John McClane died in the first few minutes of the movie. Now unfortunately getting involved, because I guess Simon wanted him to die right there, but now Zeus is now forced to be involved, as soon enough he starts making John McClane and him look for the bombs throughout New York. First they think one's about to go off in a little can, but soon enough they are told, no, it's not in that can, but it's nearby on a train, and we get this awesome train scene where they're looking for the thing, and Zeus nearly gets shot by a dumb cop, which I'm pretty sure is in fact referenced in the Incredibles movie. McClane saves a lot of people from being, bombed, but also, wrecks a train, so I feel like that, hey, acceptable losses, one train. He really doesn't want the kill count to go as high as a whole plane, so thankfully it never does. As throughout the movie, they basically go on what ends up being a wild goose chase as they constantly go as far as they possibly can to find the next one. Or as they're about to go to the next area, they're told by the FBI and CIA that indeed Simon is known as Peter Krieg, a guy who was originally known as Simon Peter Gruber. He is in fact the brother of Hans Gruber, and it is entirely possible that he wants revenge, as in, yay, Die Hard with a vengeance. The rest of the movie is them trying to figure out what is the exact school that a bigger bomb was put in, so they gotta figure out where that is, and it will detonate if they try to escort people out of there, so they try to figure out which it is. As our main two are about to go on another wild goose chase somewhere, McClane goes, "Fuck that," and decides to try and figure out what's actually happening. There has to be something else going on, and soon enough he figures out what indeed is happening. The place that was bombed recently is right near the Federal Reserve building, which of course has a whole bunch of gold under it, which, as he's figuring out, and also the name of the 21st president, Chester Arthur, of course, Simon is, of course, getting all of these gold bars and sneaking them out through garbage trucks in an awesome chase scene as the movie now goes from a mystery on where to go next and solving mysteries into a more typical action movie. They start going on a chase, and it is awesome the entire time. It seems like they're about to go on a big siege and one big last action scene on a boat, but they're actually captured and put on the actual bomb, as, yeah, soon enough they find out the bomb that's in the one school ends up being entirely fake. The real big bomb that's going to blow them up, the main characters are set to, and they just barely escape in this awesome ending action scene. This leads to two separate endings. The original ending filmed, and then one that was quickly redone as the studios decided that they needed a more conclusive ending. One that fit more with the series. Dumb. In the original ending, John McClane finds where Simon went, and Simon basically got away with it before John McClane basically shows up with a friggin' rocket launcher and basically plays Russian roulette with a friggin' rocket launcher. The producers decided that it was too menacing for McClane to do that sort of thing, even though that entire scene, when I watched it for this review, having not watched it when I first originally watched this movie, I felt fits his character perfectly. It didn't, make him evil in that scene. He was perfectly fine with murking dudes before. He does it literally in this one. Now we have a weirdly sloppy conclusion where they quickly find the guys as they're about to cross the border into Canada and quickly take them down. Very quickly. Had they, made this the real final action scene and merged it with the boat scene, it probably wouldn't have been too bad, Made that scene a little bit longer, had them keep fighting them after they got off the bomb, immediately, would have been a lot better than this strange ending they decided to shoot. I love Die Hard with a Vengeance. I think it builds onto its tension more and more in a similar way to previous movies, and though it feels more like a buddy cop movie than how the previous Die Hard movies felt, it's still incredibly enjoyable. I love the two main characters. I think they fit so well with each other. I love their dynamic. I think it's just because I like buddy cop movies, and due to the fact that I like it as a buddy cop movie rather than a Die Hard movie, which that term really means nothing when you go into the movies after this, but okay. I love the shit out of Die Hard with a Vengeance. In fact, I like it more than the original. I love its cast of characters. Its villain is even more entertaining. I love the fact that they try to really think of what they gotta do, how they gotta do it, which it really, they gotta go through a whole city and its busy schedule and how they can use their knowledge of this city to work around it. I love the dynamic between Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. Would love to see them more together. We only get a few movies of that ever, so, John McClane is a funny guy the entire time, as he constantly has a hangover, and that is a recurring joke that I think is always funny throughout the whole movie, and also weirdly leads to its conclusion. And its action scenes are absolutely top-notch. They are some of the, best 90s action scenes of them flipping around in a car. That turnaround car thing is awesome. Him walking into the bank and then getting in the friggin' elevator and him basically doing the Captain America, so when are we gonna start thing is awesome. It is a slam dinger of a friggin' buddy cop film, and I absolutely enjoy all parts of it. Again, it probably would have maybe been better as a Lethal Weapon movie, but Lethal Weapon 5, get that out of here. Maybe it is better than it's a Die Hard movie. That being said, I want to say it's better than 1, and I feel like in parts it definitely is, but the parts that bother me are twofold. Firstly, the ending. The ending does just kind of come very quickly. It feels like the movie was about to end just in general, but also in some different way, and the quick, sudden, they're in Canada, is just okay, I guess it's done now, and the action scene is so quick that it feels like it really was tacked on because it was, and the original ending would have been a lot more, climactic character-wise. Plus, I don't think the main characters connect all too well. They definitely do, and they're certainly better to each other by the end, and they do come to an understanding, but I feel like there's more they could have did with them, you know? Going into Zeus as a character and, you know, his backstory and where he comes from is something that the movie doesn't dive into at all, and even just mentioning it like a little bit, like how Al did in the first one, wouldn't cut away from any parts of the movie. You know, it would have been cool to learn a little bit more about him and why he talks the way he does and why he thinks the way he does. And it really would have added to the movie, I think. She just went the full 9 yards, is what I'm saying here, and really expanded into this as a character. Because now it feels like this movie kind of just brings in race a lot through Zeus, which feels like they're trying to say something, but then they're not smart enough to say enough with Die Hard with a Vengeance. You know, it starts and it never really gets anywhere. However, the movie is still incredibly enjoyable, and if you enjoyed Die Hard, you will enjoy Die Hard with a Vengeance even more. It's definitely better than 2, and I feel like nearly on the same level of the first one. Part of me wants to say better, but another part of me will say not. With the direction once again being from John McTiernan, I feel like they ultimately bring it together to be an incredibly enjoyable film that is definitely worthwhile. From the big explosive start, all the way to the incredibly sudden ending. Say the line, John!
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
There you go, that one's better, even though it, took nearly to the ending, but okay, thanks. The guy who helped the original script of this would later go on to help make Jumanji, Armageddon, also with Bruce Willis, Welcome to the Jungle, no, not the Jumanji one, and alongside writing, has also been producing. Die Hard 4.0, also known as, of course, Live Free or Die Hard, was, like others, written to be a whole other thing. Known as A Farewell to Arms by John Carlin, rewritten by Mark Bomback and David Marconi to be quite a little bit more Die Hard-y. Script that was originally supposed to be more about, of course, hacking and the idea of a fire sale, which is explained in the movie, but, you know, put it on screen. I'm not a tech man. Not bad writers to get onto this movie. Marconi would later write The Foreigner, while Bomback would later help write The Wolverine and 2 of the Planet of the Apes movies. And with it being directed by Len Wiseman, it definitely was given a more, modern day view on how exactly action works, him being the underworld guy. Live Free or Die Hard was also then changed around and cut to be more a PG-13 movie in order to appeal to that crowd, something that Hollywood still keeps fucking doing. But of course, a rating of the movie doesn't necessarily mean that it is a good or bad movie, as the literal next movie is the worst one. We'll get to that in a second, and that is R-rated. Mind you, there is an unrated cut of Live Free or Die Hard, which is basically the same movie, but with a little bit more of naughty words. Some of the scenes are changed around a little bit, which does make the unrated cut a better movie, but it's not like it changes it dramatically. An unrated cut really does help add to the stakes and add to the action, as it makes it clear what it was originally supposed to be. And what was it supposed to be? Well, the FBI Cyber Division ultimately sees that some hacking is going on, specifically from the other main character, that being Justin Long, playing Matthew Farrell, who apparently designed some crazy algorithm which is currently now being used by the main villain. Thomas Gabriel, played by Timothy Olyphant, is a former U.S. Department of Defense analyst who apparently wants to change the U.S.'s infrastructure by starting the fire sale, again on screen, not going to go on that. And something, hacker, tech, typing, Live Free or Die Hard. His group, who hacks into some things to try and shoot the group and try to kill them through other wacky ways. At first you're not quite sure why, but soon enough you figure out that indeed he's the one hacker who could probably shut them down, and you're like, oh, I see, okay. Justin Long, not that bad in this movie. Matt is not the best written character, but he certainly isn't a badly written character. He's, you don't think he's all that great at first, but you start to kind of like him over time. Is he a great partner to McClane? No. Is this during a point where Bruce Willis is beginning to not give as much of a shit? Yes. McClane does not feel as much as McClaney as he is in this movie. At this point, as kind of was a thing in 3, McClane is not really with his wife anymore and is now estranged from his daughter. Holly Gennaro, later calling herself McClane, is played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who is fantastic and is great in this one. She is in the beginning of the movie and then in the end of the movie when the hackers decide to get her back at the end of the movie. It's clear that she was written in the thing to make it more related to Die Hard rather than it just being another Bruce Willis action film, but she doesn't really do much in the movie. It's very unfortunate because I think she does a good job in the movie of certainly being in the scenes that she is in, which, again, is not mine. Alright, so the simple plot of the movie is the fact that they are running from the terrorists, and then they go into, like, 3 separate, like, action scenes. They're McClane's trying to bring him to Washington, D.C. because he wants to get him out of his hands. Some things are shut down. Some things go wrong. They're about to get driven somewhere else, but the hackers find them, try to kill them. They run away. Some cars start crashing, and then we get the crazy car scene where this guy drives a car into a helicopter, and you're like, what was that, John? They try to leave after hacking onto a thing and convincing OnStar to allow them to steal a car, allowing them to get to the big power plant that I feel like they find way too quickly, let's be honest, where the entire time Justin Long tries to hack and outdo his algorithm while John fights a lady in the elevator. That's a really awesome scene. The two absolutely beat each other's ass and fight down a whole elevator. It's probably the one with the most tension, and by tension I mean high tension wires that you should not be able to grab on without gloves, something that the previous movie literally told you. So of course, with the terrorists capture Lucy, McClane tries to follow them. They hack into something to get a guy in a jet to start shooting at him. The jet does so... I hate the jet scene. I hate it so much because a jet can't fucking do that. And mind you, they believe that the bad guys are in the truck that John McClane is in. And, you know, they're in a civilian area, but there's no civilians. As the earlier part of the movie did tell civilians to just leave their cars around after they were basically shut down, but like, what? Not only would that not be a thing in the first place, mind you, but secondly, why would the jet be near any of this? Even if it could hover, it wouldn't be in this civilian-based area, this, like, industrial area, just floating around where it could easily get, like, bumped into things and blow up. It's so unsafe for a jet to be around here. Even if it had a hover, it shouldn't be around. I hate the jet scene, and it's really where John McClane becomes big, crazy action man, and just, like, goes off the walls. It's awful. And eventually, he does show up, find the terrorist guy. They think they get the upper hand, but then, of course, say the line. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker! Live Free or Die Hard is fine. It is more fine than the second one. It has some fun action scenes, some likable characters, some funny lines. John McClane is John McClane, even if a little bit less than the previous ones. Bruce Willis still tries, even if less than the previous ones, and you get a group of actors who do try to bring this together into a likable, fun movie that, even though it was, you know, not looked at favorably by everyone when it came out, when you really look at it with its unrated cut, it is a lot better. It is one of those popcorn action films, and that's, again, all I need out of the action movies. And again, as I said, I either care about the action or care about the characters, and even more so than two, they do an okay job at both, right? The characters are certainly there, they're fine, but the action scenes, though incredibly fun, are on the, like, Fast and Furious 6 levels of, this is getting a little bit too wacky, but not too much, right? It's like action movies level of wacky, which is I can accept, but it's getting there. It's pushing it with the whole car scene and the jet thing, you know? Regardless, I would not say stay away from Live Free or Die Hard. It's a fun movie, and it's the best, most recent one out of the series. Mind you, this movie was nearly not made, and even several other ideas were, like, passed out, which the man certainly wouldn't do. One of them was, in fact, titled Tears of the Sun, and the title of it was later used in another Bruce Willis movie, but the actual script wasn't. So when people tell you Tears of the Sun was almost a Die Hard film, they're wrong. With New Hampshire, the movie ultimately passed on, there would be another movie, like 6 years later, in 2013, in A Good Day to Die Hard. You saw the daughter? Here's the son. John McClane Jr., Jack McClane, is played by Jai Courtney, who of course is such a boring actor that only really got good like 10 years after this movie. They, for some reason, got the two people who I would never want to hire for a movie, John Moore, who of course had previously written the bad 2006 Omen remake, and one of the worst ways to adapt a game into a screenplay, the Max Payne movie in 2008, and Skip Woods, who wrote both Hitman movies, a series that notably has a scene that I hate out of any film franchise ever, and then also X-Men Origins Wolverine, a movie that I hate more than most movies. But if you can't already tell, A Good Day to Die Hard is basically where the series dies, with them slowly kind of going more actiony and losing what really made John McClane, this likable, regular dude that just kind of gets through situations that he barely survives in and is able to do it for a good reason. A Good Day to Die Hard just throws all that out, right? It was kind of still there in Live Free or Die Hard, but in A Good Day to Die Hard 5, it's gone. It's gone. This is firmly in Bruce Willis does not care era. This is firmly in the have like piss filters all over the place and are filled with shaky cam action films. Really sucked for like a 5-year time period during this point in film. And not only does Bruce Willis barely try, if at all, he has no chemistry with Jai Courtney at all. Bruce Willis, of course, as John McClane, is just in Russia. He's there to find his son specifically, that is of note. And then, of course, he finds his son is about to get, like, put to death. For some reason, he told nobody, so nobody told him that actually his son is a spy. Something that he isn't proud of. When he finds out, he just kind of makes fun of him for it, which, thanks, Dad. And he's trying to get in there to get into Russian jail so that he can get a whistleblower out, where ultimately they're met by guy who eats carrots, which, okay, he's quickly killed when he captures the whistleblower, who ends up being the actual bad guy, and they want a something Chernobyl something. After a lot of gunny, shooty, shaky cam, inevitably the main characters find one key which opens up 3 car trunks, and get a bunch of guns to ultimately get to the least realistic action scene I've seen in my life, as John McClane, who at this point is like 60, swings around a lot more athletically than he did when he was like 20-something. Man's like basically invincible throughout the movie, as both of them fall through multiple floors of things that should absolutely at least break something. They never get hurt ever, and there's barely an actual fight. There's barely any threat, and barely any actual plot. Nothing else to say about this movie. It sucks. It's one of the biggest, just worthless piles of absolute dog shit I've seen in my life. I hate A Good Day to Die Hard. It is a nothing movie filled with nothing characters, and if you thought the previous one was bad, you're wrong. You're not only wrong in general, because there is a bunch to enjoy about Live Free or Die Hard, but it is a masterpiece in comparison to A Good Day to Die Hard. Are you kidding me? They reuse audio from the previous movie. Like, what? And what sucks the most is the fact that this movie was made as a Die Hard film. It started as a Die Hard film. The hell? It did well at the box office, but not at all critically. And mind you, the original movie didn't do well critically either, but it was quickly, like, rethought, and then it got, in the same year of its release, friggin' nominations at the one award show that never puts action films in its award show. And all of these movies are often rethought, but it's been 10 years since this one, and nobody can give me anything positive about A Good Day to Die Hard. The editing is garbage. It was clearly not just written by a couple of apes, but then was edited by the bunch of apes with a typewriter, but now they're all on, like, computers with, like, editing software. And then eventually they'll make a movie, and that's probably what happened. The worst in the series. And what sucks is there's not going to be another. Yeah, they thought about it, but, now Bruce Willis, 10 years later, has retired from acting, and now the last in the franchise that actually, tried to have him reconnect with his son and thus his family, the whole point of this franchise, ends in the worst way it possibly can, with a fucking whimper, with a splat on the page of the script, with dog shit on it. Can you tell I really don't like this movie? It is a waste of your time. If you love Die Hard, I would say watch its sequels. If you haven't somehow watched the Die Hard sequels, watch Die Hard 2 and 3, and even Live Free Die Hard. But do not, ever in your life, watch A Good Day to Die Hard. Holy shit. Jai Courtney, thankfully, has gotten better over the years, and I don't know what to say about Bruce Willis in the years since, but it sucks that this is one of the major things that I'll think about when I think about these two. At the very least, though a god-awful film, there are worse ones, because it doesn't ruin the legacy of what is Die Hard. It is unfortunate that this is the last Die Hard film to ever be a thing, and until they make a prequel with a new actor or some remake or something, or a spin-off that apparently is technically already a thing, but let's not talk about that. Die Hard will ultimately be remembered as not just one of the best Christmas movies of all time, because it still is. Don't think I forgot that I said that, because it still is. But also one of the best action films of all time, with a great sequel and a probably just as great as the original second sequel. It forms a great 80s to 90s trilogy and really helped to continue to build what action movies could be. An influential action film that made a lot of films try to be exactly like it, you know, like Speed and Speed 2, which was actually written to originally be a Die Hard sequel. But Die Hard will always go down as a lot of people's favorite films, and genuinely, same for me. It is a fantastic film that I absolutely adore, and there's a reason why I wanted to continue and watch the sequels when I had originally watched it. It's one of those action films that my parents, even though they probably shouldn't have considering all the blood and violence and fuck words, showed me when I was younger, and it allowed me to really love action films when I was younger. These movies are one of those action films that I feel like I can point to and really tell you why I think action films should be put up for, like, awards and stuff. And I hate that, you know, the Academy Awards never takes these kinds of movies seriously. Through both its failings and its successes, it shows you how great action movies can be and how artistic they can be by showing how well their camera work can have this awesome action scene and how well they can edit it together, and especially how to not do that for the movies that don't do it as well. Whether it be how to not use it as a big CGI blob of a bunch of swingy stuff and shaky cam, or how to perfectly frame a great action scene that really gives it a lot of suspense and a lot of character just by having two guys stare off at each other. It's great work in character writing in terms of likable, believable characters with great and understandable relationships, and also at the same time, a franchise with unlikable, annoying characters with absolutely nothing going on. That even though the last movie does exist, we can at least kind of look at it in a positive light and say that it actually adds to the legacy of Die Hard, as it really shows you how exactly you can make an action film both good and bad, and really the spectrum of what it is like to make an action film, and how they've really changed throughout the decades. Not only do you get 3 great movies and also a pretty good one, but also a real learning experience in terms of how to make film, and also a study on why exactly action films are just as much art as the uppity, nose up your own ass, oh, it's an old man and he's turning into a young man and now he's a kid when he's an old man. I love action films, and Die Hard is not only one of the best of them of all time, but it is also a great showing on why I love action films, and why I will always love Die Hard. And if you don't already know stuff about Die Hard, not only do you know a little bit more, but also you have every reason to go ahead and watch them right now. It's Christmas time, and it is a Christmas movie. Shut up. But I've been the Movie-a-thoner. If you enjoyed this video, then go ahead and subscribe. Click that bell and make sure you check out all the other stuff I'll be doing in the future. I love talking about movies, big franchises, and different TV shows season to season. And of course, soon enough, I'll be making some other stuff throughout 2025? What year is it soon? But, of course, I hope, most importantly, everyone has a good Christmas this year, or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Ramadan, whatever you, of course, believe in. Make sure you stay safe for the holidays and visit your family, those you can stand, of course, and make sure you just have a good time throughout the rest of not just the month of December, whether this year or in the future, if you're watching this then, but also throughout the rest of your times.